Welcome to this special edition of Hannity, Scandals Plaguing the Democrats. I'm Jeanine Pirro, in tonight for Sean. It's been a terrible week for the left. Senator Al Franken is under fire after this photo was made public by radio host Leanne Tweeden. She's accusing Senator Franken of sexual misconduct, which he's now apologizing for. Then, with the Uranium One scandal heating up, Hillary Clinton appears to be getting very nervous about the potential for a special counsel being appointed to investigate that nuclear deal. Clinton is now trying to spin the idea of a special counsel as, quote, authoritarian. And Hillary continues to make excuses for why she lost in 2016. The failed presidential candidate is questioning the legitimacy of President Trump's victory. Plus, the day of reckoning is finally coming for the Clintons. Democratic Senator Kirsten Gillibrand is saying Bill Clinton should have resigned over his affair with Monica Lewinsky. Here's what she told the New York Times.
Is it your view that President Clinton should have stepped down at that time, given the allegations?
Yes, I think that is the appropriate response. But I think things have changed today, and I think under those circumstances, there should be a very different reaction.
This comes as many on the left and members in the media are finally starting to admit that sexual misconduct allegations against President Bill Clinton were dismissed and downplayed, and that Clinton's accusers were widely attacked and discredited. Look at a couple of these headlines. Vox, Bill Clinton should have resigned. What he did to Monica Lewinsky was wrong, and he should have paid the price. From the New York Times, what about Bill? Sexual misconduct debate revives questions about Clinton. And from The Atlantic, Bill Clinton, a reckoning. Feminists saved the 42nd president of the United States in the 1990s. They were on the wrong side of history. Is it finally time to make things right? This is a major change from what we've seen as recently as a 2016 campaign. Look at how the media attacked Clinton's accusers back then.
A trio of women who say Bill Clinton made unwanted sexual advances in the 80s and 90s. Mr. Clinton denies it. Two of the cases were plagued by factual discrepancies.
When it was Bill Clinton's problem, almost in the moment, Republicans tried to make it an issue, and it didn't work. So why is it going to work 20 years later with his wife? I just don't see it.
And the issue of Bill Clinton's past is that fair game? And
it would be if he were running for president, but he isn't. Hillary Clinton is running for president.
The big issue. I would like to apologize to those tramps that have slept with my husband. Maybe she could have said that.
Joining us now with reaction, our radio talk show host Tammy Bruce, media reporter for The Hill Joe Concha, former Clinton pollster and Fox News contributor Doug Schoen, and American Conservative Union Chair Matt Schlapp. All right, I'm going to start with you, Joe, from The Hill. Why the difference? What happened between when Bill Clinton was accused and everyone saying, gee, this is a private matter, let's just let bygones be bygones and these women can't be believed, and today?
Judge, there's an old saying where if you abandon your principles for convenience, they're not your principles. They're your costume. In other words, principles are only principles when they're exercised at times of inconvenience. So now when members of the left-leaning media or politicians like Senator Gillibrand speak out about this, it rings hollow, because the time to speak out was either in the 1990s when President Clinton was in office, or during the 2016 campaign when his wife was running and she ran a narrative back in the 90s and even last year dismissing his accusers. You had to do it then. To do it now, it means nothing, because the Clintons don't mean anything to them anymore. They don't have any more use for them anymore.
Okay, so Doug, if what Joe is saying is correct, and I think this all started with Donna Brazile. I mean, the Clintons kind of going out of power. I mean, Senator Gillibrand, I mean, does she look ridiculous? I mean, on the one hand, she says, Hillary Clinton is this great woman who's a supporter of women, and within 10 months, She's saying, you know, Bill Clinton really is, you know, he shouldn't have.
I think there is a special place in hell for Kirsten Gillibrand.
Wow.
She was elected with the help of both Clintons. They campaigned, they fundraised, they extended themselves, and now you saw how she jumped at the chance to say Bill Clinton should, for some reason, retrospectively resign from office.
But should he have resigned? Let's start with that question.
You know, it was here's the answer. It was fully litigated with a special prosecutor in impeachment. What was litigated was the whole case of what he did inappropriately with Monica Lewinsky.
Okay,
so
his semen was on her dress. He's the president of the United States. She's a 20-year-old intern.
Right.
So
he was impeached, and the Senate didn't convict. And as far as I'm concerned, it's done.
Okay, so because it happened in the past,
let's deal with the present, like Uranium One.
Okay,
let's deal
I'm
with.
not going there. That's not what I'm talking.
Well, I'm going where the American people need to be.
You're going where I'm going. I'm hosting this right now.
All right.
Okay, Matt, go.
Yeah. So basically, what's happening is the Clinton legacy was Republicans were just focusing on sex, and it was all just about sex. And Bill Clinton wanted to get to the work of the American people. And what's happened all these many years later is that alibi, that ridiculous answer to fooling around with an intern, raping, attacking, it's not going to cut it. The American people are tired of the whitewashing of the Clinton scandals, which started with this. And if Bill Clinton had been can you imagine if Hillary Clinton had won and Bill Clinton was the first gentleman? We'd be going through this all over again.
He's not a gentleman, okay?
Well, yeah, I say it with quotation marks, okay?
So, Tammy, now I'm going to go to you. So let's talk about the fact, had Bill Clinton been made accountable for what he did, and there is uncontroverted evidence. Then you want to talk about an abuse of power. There is nothing more disparate than the president of the United States and a 20-year-old intern in the Oval Office and his semen on her dress. That had that been dealt with appropriately and not alleged to be a private matter between Bill and Hillary, instead there would have been thousands of women who would not have been affected in the workplace had we then dealt with it as a country, as opposed to, 30 years later?
Well, but we also heard stories prior to his election about his behavior. Now we know with the Weinstein situation, Kevin Spacey, et cetera, that there are patterns to predators. In fact, the Lewinsky situation may have been the one consensual dynamic in his history of predation. So this is, we're talking about, Juanita Broderick, Kathleen Willey, Paula Jones, leading up to the presidency, during the presidency, and of course, who knows what after. But what this is really about, Judge, is the fact that the Democrats, they're this dangerous now. They don't care that they facilitated this in the 90s. All they want to do now is try to remake history so that they can pretend to be our moral betters, our moral superiors again, so they can lecture us on the Republicans who are doing it. They don't care about the issue. They do not care about women. They abandoned their female base.
What he did was wrong.
I'll let you talk.
Doug, I did not interrupt you, Doug. The bottom line here is that this is a complete meltdown, and the fact that they're so, and it's not just Gillibrand, it's pretty much everyone throwing Clinton under the bus, when in fact, what are we going to have next? A committee determining whether or not Ted Kennedy should be censured because he left a woman to die at the bottom of a lake?
Oh, God.
The Democrats have been treating women like crap for decades, and this is a reckoning, and it's important for every part of the establishment where powerful men prey on women that they think are beneath them. It's a time to end that.
I want to follow up on one thing, Tammy. But the Democrats are supposedly the party that support women. Where's Nancy Pelosi on all this? Where was Kirsten Gillibrand, who was fighting for women and, making sure that women had an appropriate place to go in the military if they were sexually assaulted? Is she a hypocrite? Yeah. Is she a user?
Well,
what is Kirsten Gillibrand in all of this?
This is where I agree with Doug, is that the fact that she is in that seat because of the help of the Clintons. Right. We've all known his behavior. I, as a feminist at the time, condemned now, and all the feminists who were supporting him and enabling him, including his wife, who remains an enabler, and women like Gillibrand. This is the point. so opportunistic, so craven that they don't even care whatever they can do to get more power or to keep their seat. Doug is absolutely right. But this is where we've got to stand together in a unified framework to condemn that and realize, though, why they're doing it. All they see it is the political opportunity. And at the same, this, of course, is an existential issue. And I think that their silence is part of enabling of this dynamic.
All right, Doug, because I'm going to let you go.
Sure.
Hit it.
Simple point. Anybody, to Tammy's point, Democrat who or Republican, who is engaging in this kind of harassment should go. We have evidence from Franken. He's acknowledged it. Sarah Sanders is right. Touching the woman's breasts when she was asleep is abhorrent. The apology isn't enough.
What should happen?
He should go. Period.
What does that mean?
He
Who
should
gets him to go?
I think
he should resign.
He should resign. Tammy's exactly right.
How do we get him to resign? You know,
invite him to.
Well, go ahead.
I know the media will not help in that regard. Yesterday, during Sarah Huckabee Sanders' press briefing, this is right after Al Franken news broke. #1 topic on Twitter. Everybody's talking about it. Let me break down for you the transcript of the press briefing. 15 questions on Roy Moore. How many questions on Al Franken? 1. How many on Robert Menendez? 1. What do those politicians have in common? They're both sitting senators, and they got 2 questions combined, while Roy Moore got 15 from the White House press corps. That's not just bias.
Crazy.
But let me jump on this Bob Menendez situation, which is, yes, he had a mistrial, but that trial wasn't even looking at many of these sexual allegations, which an ethics committee investigation will look at with Bob Menendez. These tawdry accounts of what happened when he went on these trips.
Well, that's bribery, corruption. I want
No.
But
there's also sexual harassment allegations.
It's underage prostitutes.
Yes.
Right.
These are issues that, look, everything with a president or senators, we can all talk about the law, and the laws is important. But in the end, it's also politics. And there's something going on in this country where the American people think the country's on the wrong track. They think there's too many crooks in Washington, D.C. They're tired of Congress, and they're tired of the runaround, and they're not seeing their lives improve, and they're not going to take this crap from their elected officials any longer. I've seen a big change.
So when the Democrats are saying, Gillibrand right now, saying, I want, the Clintons gone, this isn't just about Donna Brazile and the rest of them saying, let's get rid of the Clintons. This is about them saying, everybody's saying, let's clean this all up. But what I don't understand...
Because they've been covered. The media has covered for too many Democrats for too long. Republicans don't get covered. That's the one difference. Democrats get covered by their left-wing friends in the media, and I think on these topics, that's over.
But you know what? When Gillibrand then says, I'm going to ask you this, Tammy, when Gillibrand then says, she tried to clarify it by saying, by today's standards, this is terrible, not by yesterday's standard, as if a rape 30 years ago wasn't as bad as it is today, when an imbalance in power wasn't as bad as it is today. That's just stupid.
I don't know.
It's an excuse.
Well, what planet she's been living on, because there were a lot of people who were outraged with what was going on with Bill Clinton. This is, for her, it's a situational ethics, right? For her, it's in the moment with what appeals to her. She's a liberal in this day and age. If you're a liberal and a Democrat in this day and age, something is wrong with you. The bottom line is,
I'm a liberal and a Democrat. I think I'm okay.
And you think she should be gone? Kirsten Gillibrand.
I think politically what she said was abhorrent. I don't think she should resign, but I hope her constituents... Of course she's a hypocrite. I said that. Special place in hell. I think we investigate people with regard, without regard to party. We get rid of anybody who's an abuser, period.
She's being honest. And the fact is, more Democrats are going to do what Gillibrand did.
Is she honest?
Because she's doing it. Hold on. She's doing it for political reasons. I buy that. And that in her party, they're having a big divorce with Clinton Incorporated, which I think is lovely.
No,
but what's going to happen?
What they're doing is paving the way for the next Democrat, and she's looking to make sure that she's in power with the next one. She's a
Judge,
user.
you're exactly right.
She is a user.
But I like the Democrats turning on Clintons and saying that the apologies in 1990s
Republicans would turn on Clinton and use the Justice Department the way it's supposed to be used.
That's a new topic. I was trying to say that.
Final word, Joe.
I don't think there are any special places in hell, right? I mean,
but there are
like
special prosecutors on Uranium One. That's what we should be focusing on, because that's today's news, and that's what matters.
May I just...
Tammy, let me say one thing is that they say it's about
bipartisanship, no matter who's doing it, only when they lose control of the narrative. The fact is, by throwing Clinton under the bus, they mean to try to have it only be about Republicans. Look what we did. We got rid of that one, and they want control back. That's not going to happen. This is about Democrats and the hypocrisy of saying that they represent represent every woman in this country, and they do not anymore. It's been a fraud for decades. The feminist movement and the Democratic Party have been a fraud for decades, and now people know.
To me, it's right and wrong. Right and wrong. Anybody who abuses, regardless of party, should go. Matt is right. Let's clean out the entire process.
We could have more senators, new senators, than we've ever had in our history if the standard is that this kind of behavior is not acceptable.
Amen. Let's have it happen.
Joe Manchin, the Hill, last word.
Sexual harassment is not a partisan issue. No one has a moral high ground anymore.
And you know what the shame of it is? It has been a partisan issue, and parties have covered for themselves.
And the Democrats are supposed to be the owners of it. They're not.
A lot of energy here tonight. Coming up, we're going to have more on Senator Al Franken being accused of sexual misconduct. And later, the walls seem to be closing in on Hillary Clinton. How sad. We'll explain why the controversies surrounding her aren't going away anytime soon, as this special edition of Hannity by Jeanine continues. Welcome back to this special edition of Hannity. Earlier today, Leanne Tweeden, the radio host who accused Senator Al Franken of sexually harassing her back in 2006, appeared on The View, where she described how the Democratic senator forcibly kissed her while they were on the same USO tour. Take a look at this.
He just sort of comes at me and he puts his hand behind my head and he comes in, and it happens so fast. You know, he just comes in and he mashes his mouth against my mouth and sticks his tongue in my mouth. And I was so shocked because, of course, I was not expecting that at all, right? I'm thinking that was the last thing I was expecting. And I pushed him away from me, and I'm like, if you ever do that to me again, you know, what are you doing?
Tweeden also shared a note she received from Senator Franken apologizing for that incident, as well as for taking this photo, which shows Franken groping Leanne as she slept during that same USO tour. Take a look at this.
It's on letterhead from Al. It says, "Dear Leanne, I want to apologize to you personally. I don't know what was in my head when I took that picture, but that doesn't matter. There's no excuse, and I understand why you could feel violated by that photo. I remember that rehearsal differently, but what's important is that the impact it had on you, and you felt violated by my actions, and for that I apologize. I have tremendous respect for your work for the USO, and I am ashamed that my actions ruined that experience for you. I am so sorry. Sincerely, Al Franken."
After this disturbing story surfaced yesterday, senators on both sides of the aisle called for an ethics investigation into Senator Franken. Joining us now with a reaction is Fox News correspondent at large, Geraldo Rivera, and Fox News contributor and CRTV.com host, Jeanine Pirro. All right, guys, I'll start with you, Jeanine. What should happen to Al Franken?
Well, listen, he got caught red-handed. Thank goodness for photographic evidence, right? I think he should step down. And listen, when you look at the two sides of the spectrum here, Republicans, Democrats, the media will be screaming and calling for a person to step down if they were Republican. You had the Democrats who were saying it should be investigated. So clearly, if the man had any morals, any common sense, I think he should step down.
All right, Geraldo?
I just don't buy that. I think that what infuses this entire epidemic of sex harassment claims is a deep sense of political partisanship. The Republicans are appalled when the Democrats do it. The Democrats are appalled when the Republicans do it. I think that there is really no moral high ground. The rules have changed, and until people get used to the new normal, there are a lot of people like Senator Franken and perhaps Judge Roy Moore who are going to go down because they haven't caught up with the new rules. I think that between now and Thanksgiving, all the rehab centers in the country are going to be filled with people doing their mea culpas, Judge. I think that what we're seeing now is a hinge in history.
Okay.
We're seeing people coming to grips with what has been a problem for a long time.
You know, Geraldo, what I said in the earlier segment was this. Had we dealt with Bill Clinton, had the Democratic Party, and not so much because it's the Democratic Party, but it was the party that supposedly stands up for women, had they done what they should have done, so many women would not have been subjected to what happened because, you know, this was a man who did something that could have been proven because there was this differential in terms of power between the intern situation that was proven. Now, when we've got Al Franken now saying, I don't know what was in my head when I took the picture, he really wasn't apologizing for grabbing her and kissing her. He's apologizing for taking the picture, which was proof positive of his groping her breasts. I mean, what kind of apology is that?
It's not.
Well, I think that Franken is in deep doo-doo right now. He was my favorite candidate to be the Democrat, to represent the Democrats in 2020 against President Trump in the presidential election. Now his career is toast. His career is absolutely over. Now he may, and it's really up to him and his family and the Senate Ethics Committee, whether he can survive out his term. But his national aspirations are gone. He is being punished, my goodness, in a way that is as profoundly unsettling to a person as you could possibly imagine. I don't know why she held this information for as long as she did, but I think that also indicates how things have changed. Franken did this picture the same year President Trump had his infamous conversation with Billy Bush for Access Hollywood. That was only 2006. And yet the world is an entirely different place today.
Words versus actions. And listen, this ethics committee, that's weak too, because we're just finding out this week that there's a slush fund to pay off women, hush money, who have been sexually harassed by members of Congress. We're just finding out about this. Anywhere from $15 to $17 million has already been paid out. This fund was established, I think, 15 years ago, Judge Jeanine. That is absolutely outrageous. It's a club. It's two sets of books, two sets of rules. We can't do anything like this.
You know, Jeanine, what's so interesting about this is you're right. We just find out about it. 235 judgments, sexual harassment, members of Congress, House, and Senate, Geraldo, where $15 million between 15 and 17, if what you say is accurate, where we, the taxpayers, pay for the sexual harassment judgments. But Geraldo, I want to go back. I want to talk about this ethics investigation. What sanction can an ethics investigation, what power do they have? Look, and who conducts the investigation? It's the old boys club. Who are we kidding?
I agree that there is a toothless aspect to it unless they can prove a crime. But you can't for a minute minimize how disruptive this is in the life of Senator Franken. He victimized this young lady 11 years ago. Now you've got to pay.
They're covering up for each other, Geraldo, and I don't mean to interrupt you. But it's not disruptive.
What kind of comment is that? That doesn't even make any sense.
You don't for a second.
What? Go.
Neither of you for a second pretends that that huge slush fund has been used only to pay off the victims of Democrats, do you?
No,
what about Senator
Vitter?
What about Senator Craig? What about Congressman Mark Foley? All Republicans.
Geraldo, we're not talking politics now. We're talking about men who abuse women.
Then we have to be equally outraged regardless of what party they represent.
I don't care what their party is, Geraldo. I spent my life prosecuting men who abuse women. I spent my life going after injustice, whether it was age and youth and money and poverty or strong against the weak. That's the problem. And Congress is just the epitome and the iceberg.
God bless you for that. But let me just say, isn't it interesting that when Roy Moore got in a jam, all the Democrats pounced. Then Al Franken got in a jam, and all the Republicans are pouncing. That, to me, is evidence that there's more at work here, that hypocrisy is still ruling rather than morality.
Geraldo, there's photographic evidence. What more do you need?
Okay, I don't care. Here's what I care about. Will it change, Jeanine?
It's one big club, just like I said.
But don't you think the American people are going to see it, and they're going to say, we don't care what party you're in? And I think that, and you know what? The Democrats, if they are true to what they're saying now, if they're not just trying to deep six the Clintons, if they say, we're going to stand up for women, and if the Republicans say we're going to stand up for women, then you know what? Maybe there is a day of reckoning for everyone who abused the weaker.
Well, up until now, they only stand up for women when they need their votes.
Last word, Geraldo.
I think that there's going to be a period of extreme turmoil and people's lives being uprooted as more and more memories are refreshed by all of this, as more and more victims and purported victims are emboldened by the wave that's obviously hit us on this. You don't know where this stops. This thing now is really, no one is guiding where this scandal goes right now. It's not, Republicans aren't in control of it, Democrats aren't in control. You have no idea how many, I remember in Washington where they used to wait for the seasonal interns to come for the new crop. The new crop, it was a well-known secret that Foley and others were preying on the interns. Wait until all of them now remember and are encouraged and emboldened to come forward. You have no idea where this is going to end up, and no one is in control of this. That's what makes it so fascinating.
And the operative word there, secret. It was an open secret, whether it's Harvey Weinstein in Hollywood or what's going on in Washington or what's going on in whatever world it is. It's time for those open secrets to stop being so secret. And Jeanine Borelli, Geraldo Rivera, thanks for being with us. Coming up, Hillary Clinton seems to be getting nervous about the scandal surrounding her. We'll explain why she should be as this special edition of Hannity continues. Welcome back to this special edition of Hannity. Scandals plaguing the Democrats for months. This program has been shining a light on one particularly damning scandal involving the Clintons and the very sketchy sale of Uranium One. Last night, The Hill's John Solomon released a brand new report detailing that. Now, even Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein is seeking access to an informant who helped the FBI investigate a bribery case surrounding that Russian state energy company. But Hillary Clinton wants you to think this scandal is much to do about nothing. Take a look at this.
The Uranium One story has been debunked countless times by members of the press, by independent experts. It is nothing but a false charge that the Trump administration is trying to drum up. This is such an abuse of power, and it goes right at the rule of law. If they send a signal that we're going to be like some dictatorship, some authoritarian regime where political opponents are going to be unfairly, fraudulently investigated, that rips at the fabric of the contract we have, that we can trust our justice system.
In a radio interview early today, Hillary Clinton reiterated those comments and even called the Uranium One scandal a, quote, political stunt. Joining us now with reaction is the author of Clinton Cash from the Government Accountability Institute, Peter Schweitzer. Good evening, Peter. You know, when
hey, Judge, great to see you.
Good to see you as well. When your book first came out in 2015, you know, did you ever wonder why in 2015 there wasn't an automatic investigation, by Congress, by the FBI, by the Justice Department? Because Peter, when I read that book, we covered it here. I covered it on Justice. I mean, it was explosive. Your facts were uncontroverted. And yet Hillary Clinton says, it was a false charge. It was, it was controverted by, press reports. I mean, what is she talking about?
Yeah, it's certainly not the way that I recall it. Look, the book came out in April of 2015. The Uranium One story we shared before the book came public with the investigative unit at the New York Times. They ran a 4,000-word front-page piece confirming the findings, the hidden donations, the CFIUS approval, the Clintons' connections to this drama. And really, after the book came out, Judge, the FBI did launch an investigation. Right. And they felt there was enough compelling evidence. This has been widely reported in the Wall Street Journal and other places. They felt there was enough evidence to get the Department of Justice to grant them subpoena powers. And they were turned down by the Obama Justice Department. So, her argument that this has been debunked, it hasn't been debunked. All the debunkers do, Judge, is they change the timeline or they exclude facts. And they say the fact pattern doesn't work because they've excluded certain facts. And what I've said from the beginning, you and I have talked about it, yeah. You're a seasoned prosecutor, is, look, you just need to investigate and find out what happened, and then you can figure out what crimes, if any, have been committed. And that's all we're calling for.
Peter, I have to commend you because but for you, we wouldn't know about this. And, on my show, Justice, one of the things that I did was I talked about the fact that uranium is an essential ingredient for Moly 99, which the law in this country requires that, we make in this country, that we are now shipping uranium out to other countries and then paying for it. It's an essential ingredient for nuclear medicine, for medical isotopes. It now makes sense to me that, the Russians were in such a rush to buy it. But what do you think is going to happen if this witness who was gagged, and now Dianne Feinstein wants to hear from this FBI informant and is now ungagged? What do you think we're going to hear from him?
Well, I have to say up front, I have not met him. I don't know him. But what I understand by looking at legal documents involving his case, this guy was an insider's insider. Right. He was being paid by the Russian company $50,000 a month to serve as a lobbyist. And in the legal filings, what you find is his job was to basically carry the flag for this entity in Washington, D.C. And that job included setting up meetings with high-ranking administration officials. This would have been the Obama administration, people on Capitol Hill, and other elite influence, makers. So he was working at a very, very high level. And what has leaked out seems to indicate he's got a lot of information that relates specifically to Uranium One. So it's going to be very exciting. And I think it's important to point out, Judge, also, remember, we already have a foreign government official saying that involving Uranium One, that he and his fellow government employees were extorted by the Clintons, then Senator Hillary Clinton. This comes from the Kazakh head of their atomic agency, saying that Senator Clinton refused to meet with Kazakh officials unless and until they granted uranium concessions to Frank Giustra, who ended up giving, more than $100 million to the Clinton Foundation. So we've got that testimony. We've got this new witness coming out. It's going to get very interesting here in the weeks ahead.
Peter, were you ever afraid for your life as you were investigating this, as you were writing the book?
Well, I'll just say this, Judge, in general terms, we do take and have taken security precautions. We do face in our organization cyber challenges on a regular basis. This is important stuff, and I think the more public it is, the better it is for everybody who's investigating it, whether that's the informant or whether that's other journalists who are pursuing this story.
Do you think that ultimately there will be justice in this case?
Look, I think there should be. And I think right now, I think we take this step by step. And I remember you and I sat down in New York and had lunch, and you walked me through the process of prosecution. It's a step by step. First thing we need to do is gather all the information without having one subpoena, without having looked at any of Hillary's emails, while not looking at any personal communications. We already have the transference of money, that money being hidden, not publicized by the Clintons, that they received this money at the time the deal was being approved. And we have a witness, this foreign senior government official, and we now have this other informant. That's a lot of evidence without one subpoena, without any investigatory powers being used. So let's gather all the information and find out what happened.
All right, Peter, thanks so much. And joining us now with more is investigative reporter Sarah Carter and Fox News contributor Charles Hurt. All right, guys. And as Sarah Carter, of course, you have done incredible work on this. Kudos to you as well. And I'm going to start with you. Is there any new information, anything that you know about the informant that we can tell the audience about tonight?
Absolutely, Judge Jeanine. What I can say right now is that we're going to be breaking a story next week that will show with multiple documents as well as other sourcing that they were very well aware, Vadim Mirkarin and all the others that were under investigation by the FBI of Uranium One and had direct knowledge of Uranium One. You know, the Justice Department has tried to kind of distance itself from that. We saw that Attorney General Sessions made that statement. Well, you know, this case was criminal. It didn't have anything to do with Uranium One. What I can tell you now is that we will show evidence that it did have a lot to do with Uranium One. What they chose to look at was on the criminal side. What they did not reveal was the Uranium One side.
Whoa. And this is next week?
Correct.
All right. Charles, what is your take on this?
Well, you know, it's really amazing to listen to that clip that you played earlier of Hillary Clinton talking about how she's being pursued and how unfair it is and how
she's good, isn't she?
She is. It's amazing, truly amazing, especially when you compare that to the fact that what we do know happened in the middle of the last election, which is you had the Obama administration deploying the most advanced, sophisticated spying network known to man against a political opponent in the middle of a presidential election. And for Hillary Clinton to sit here now and talk about how she's being pursued on political grounds, it's a laughing stock. I think that that a lot of the other developments that don't have anything to do with this, but have Democrats jumping ship like rats trying to get away from the Clintons, I think it's going to put them in a very, very tough situation. And to answer a question you asked earlier, is she scared? She should be scared, but I bet because of 30 years of getting away with stuff like this, she's not scared.
But you know what's interesting is, you know, when she says things like it's a false charge, it's an abuse of power, you know, the rule of law, it's a dictatorship, all of that stuff that she said in that clip that we just used, it's consistent with the false narrative that was created through the DNC and the Clinton campaign money that went to Perkins Coie, that then went to the Fusion GPS, that then went to Christopher Steele, and all that possibly was used as the basis for the FISA warrant. I mean, these people are, they create the narrative, they buy the narrative, they pay for the narrative. And Sarah, I go back to you, the narrative that you, and the truth that you have been able to get at. I mean, do you think that the Justice Department will finally be able to, you know, look at this and you know, you have created the crumbs that the Justice Department and Congress, oversight and reform, are starting to look at? Do you think that we'll ever get to some grand jury to actually look at this?
I actually do think so, Judge Jeanine. I think so. And, you know, I was listening to Charlie Hurt and listening to you reiterate what's happened over the last year. So many stories. And I don't think people even remember all the stories we broke earlier in the year on unmasking and the expansive laws of the NSA. Charlie brought that up. And, you know, there's a lot of concern there, too. How far was the Obama administration listening in, looking into people, political players? I mean, was it political espionage? And this is something that I think we really need to focus focus on, something we really need to look at. And I think that when it comes to Uranium One, yes, absolutely, with all the evidence out there, Peter Schweitzer brought up some great points. We have evidence already. This is just more evidence. And if they don't call for an investigation, I think a lot of Americans will be asking why.
You know what? And I really feel, and it's not the prosecutor and me, I just think the American people have had it. It's not right. If there is something to, and you've got these pieces that need to be looked at, the fact that no one is looking at them, I mean, Congress can look at it, but Congress doesn't have a grand jury. Anyway, I have to say thanks so much for being with us, Sarah and Charlie. And coming up, Hillary Clinton is still whining about last year's election. She just can't seem to accept that President Donald Trump beat her fair and square. We're going to play you her remarks. That and more as this special edition of Hannity continues. You're going to love it. Stay with us.
Voter suppression you talked about and Russian interference. Do you think it was a legitimate election?
I think that there are lots of questions about its legitimacy, and we don't have a method for contesting that in our system. That's why I've long advocated for an independent commission to get to the bottom of what happened.
Well, even I can't believe that. Welcome back to this special edition of Hannity. That was Hillary Clinton this week, still in denial about the 2016 election results. Hillary should stop whining and questioning the legitimacy of the election and start worrying about the scandals that are closing in on her because President Donald Trump beat her fair and square. And joining us now with reaction is the founder of Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk, and GOPAC Chairman David Avella. All right, gentlemen. What do you think? And I'll start with you, Charlie. Should she be worried, or is she right?
Well, she should be very worried. And I mean, look, she says that we need a commission to figure it out. Well, first of all, every single state has a board of elections, and they independently certified the election results back from last November. And in fact, Jill Stein challenged all these election results through multiple lawsuits, and it even corroborated President Trump's victory even further, and he won the Electoral College in a total landslide. Finally, I was in Michigan campaigning with Donald Trump Jr. We were working our tail off. You know what? You know why you lost, Hillary? Because you were doing fundraisers in San Francisco while we were talking to voters in Detroit, while we were talking to voters in Milwaukee. That's what happened. It's not Russian interference. It's not voter suppression. It's you got outworked, and you did not communicate to middle Americans. And you know what? She should be worried, because she's also, as equally lazy, she's also corrupt.
All right. And so, David Avella, she says there are lots of questions about the legitimacy of the election. Are there?
The Democrat that ought to be questioning the legitimacy of the election is Bernie Sanders, and we can start with Donna Brazil's book. Had Hillary not had the rules written for her, who knows if she would have gotten the nomination. But look, here is why it is so good that Hillary Clinton lost. This week, we wouldn't be talking about tax cuts. The House wouldn't have passed tax cuts had Donald Trump not won. We wouldn't be talking about getting rid of regulations to be creating jobs had Hillary Clinton not won, had Donald Trump not won. So fortunately, the only thing Hillary Clinton has to do is to complain about legitimacy. Fortunately, Donald Trump is president, and he's setting the agenda in Washington.
You know, Charlie, they talk about the Trump derangement syndrome, you know, the fact that the Democrats, you know, can't deal with the fact that Donald Trump won. You know, I talk about it all the time on my show, Justice. I talk about the fact that Hillary needs a lobotomy because she keeps talking about the fact that, you know, well, what happened, what went wrong. It was the Russians, it was the Jim Comey, it was this, it was that, it was the moon, the stars, whatever. I mean, when is this woman going back into the woods? What is wrong with her? Doesn't she know people aren't listening to her anymore?
Well, she needs a lobotomy. She also needs a really good lawyer, because I think there's going to be some indictments coming around.
Oh, not unless Jeff Sessions either, you know. Look,
well, I was going to say that. Judge, I was going to say that. You know, what's going on with Sessions? Sessions testifies this week. Oh, there's not enough evidence for investigating. What, are you kidding me? Like $130 million to a private foundation after your uranium deal was approved with the signature of Secretary. I mean, yeah, that's not, I mean, give me a break. I mean, he says there's not enough evidence for an investigation.
No, he said we need facts.
The Department of Justice.
He said we need facts.
Well, those are facts. I mean, follow the money. I mean, you just don't wire $145 million to a foundation unless there's some pay to play. The Russians didn't give money to to her because they were so, invested in the charitable interests of the Clinton Foundation. It was pay to play through a private foundation.
But you know what, Chris? They gave Bill $500,000 for that speech in Moscow because he's such a good speaker. David?
He's so charismatic.
And the only people right now out there criticizing the Democrats or criticizing the Clintons are those Democrats who want to run in 2020. Kristen Gillibrand is doing a calculated decision to criticize the Clintons to try to appeal to the Bernie Sanders voters.
You know, what do you say about that, David? I mean, that she turned like this. I mean, 10 months ago, Hillary Clinton's the greatest thing that ever happened to women. And now all of a sudden she's like this user hypocrite that, we should have forced him out.
Well, it's as I just said, she is making a calculated decision about 2020 as to how does she separate herself from the pack of all the Democrats who are running, and how can she appeal to the Bernie Sanders voters, so now she's going to be anti-Hillary Clinton.
But you know what? That's not enough. There has to be a consequence. It's calculated, yes. But if you're a hypocrite and you're a user, shouldn't there be a consequence, Charlie? You know, if you're that simple, if you go with the wind, should you represent us?
No, you shouldn't. And I mean, this is the modern Democratic Party. They're out sanctimoniously talking about sexual harassment for 2 weeks, saying that any senator who ever involves themselves in any of this behavior must resign immediately. Then Al Franken comes out with picture evidence, and they say, we must have an ethics investigation and we must have a conversation about this. Even one person said, I hope he seeks therapy. Oh, really? Well, if a Republican did that, you'd be calling for his resignation yesterday. So no, they shouldn't represent us. It's complete hypocrisy. It's not a double standard. It's a triple standard.
All right.
And, as you know, the only reason it's Democrats, and they're protected by all the elites.
Okay, I have 15 seconds, David. What should happen to Al Franken?
He should resign. Everything we need to know.
What should happen to Moore?
Everything we should need to know about the Democratic Party is we talk about Joe Biden, we talk about Hillary Clinton, we talk about all of the past leaders of the Democratic Party. There is no future of the Democratic Party.
That's it. Coming up, more of the special edition of Hannity right after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back to this special edition of Hannity. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have this evening, but be sure to watch Justice tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll have an exclusive interview with Congressman Jim Jordan and Ron DeSantis. I traveled down to Washington, D.C. to ask them about the developing Clinton scandals and so much more. Plus, we'll have a new installment of Street Justice on who the sexiest man alive is. Again, that's tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern. Hope you join me tomorrow night, so have a great night. It's Friday night, in case you didn't know.